Hi, welcome back. I'm Jay, or as you may know, Unfamiliar from the TGC forums. Now, in this particular episode of the tutorials, we will just be mocking out the base mesh. No too finer details, just literally the block mesh. That's all we need, because I don't want to make it too complex for the new beginners. So, by now I can imagine and hope that you've downloaded Blender. I'm still on 2.69 rather than 2.7 that's available. That's not a major issue, doesn't really matter, it's not going to be that different. So, if you start up Blender, this is what you should see. You should see your object tools over here, you should see your properties panel here, you should see all the different sections that make up the scene here. You're not going to need to look at this, really. What you should see inside the viewport is your camera, some sort of light, a point light, and a cube. That's what Blender will always start with unless you've changed it. I have changed mine, and I've removed the light and the camera. So to select things, you just put your cursor over it and right click, but you'll see that it deselects one of them if you click on another thing. To select both, select one, press and hold shift, and right click on the other one. I'm going to delete these. You delete them by pressing X. It asks you, are you sure? Just click on that box, yes. So what we're going to use to make the main base mesh is this cube starting out with. Now what we could do is we could just make it a little bit strange and yada yada yada. But what we're going to work off is a reference image. Now to bring reference images into Blender for us to copy from or to sort of plan with, we bring them in as a background image. To do that, we press N to bring up this particular properties panel here. Yours will probably start up at the top, so if you just scroll all the way down, you'll see what it says background images. If you just tick that box and click that arrow so it brings down a bit more information about background images. Click on add image, again more drop down options. I'll just bring these out a bit. I should really start my screencast keys. Okay, so what we need to do is click on open. I've got my reference image in that particular folder there. I will put a link in the description to that reference image so you can copy along if you want, or you can try and find your own reference images, that's fine. So with this reference image, you'll see it's behind the cube, but it's not really centralized. This is the front orthographic of the cement barrier that we're going to be creating. There's a side profile and there's a top-down view. So what we need to do is make this front view more centralized on the central cross. I'll just hide that cube a minute. So you can see the red line going across here, that's known as the X-axis. And the blue line going down here, that's the Z-axis. And this green one is Y-axis. Okay? Now to switch between views, you use your numpad. So we're in numpad 1 and you'll see front orthographic. Numpad 3 is right orthographic. Numpad 7 is top down. They're the only three views that we're going to be using today. If you're using a laptop and you haven't got a number pad, you can change between those views by going to view, and you've got them all here, so you can go right, front and top. They're the only views we're going to be using. Either that, or you can use your middle mouse button to pan around in 3D space. Okay, so I'll just unhide that cube. What we need to do is obviously see through this cube so we can move this image around. The easiest way to do that is with the cube selected, just press Z and it goes into wireframe mode. Either that, or when it's selected, come down to this little globe here and it brings up the viewport shading options: rendered, textured, solid or wireframe. Obviously I wanted wireframe. So what we need to do is move this image, like I said, more centralized onto these axes here. So back into this panel here, we've got the image selected here, and then all the way down at the bottom you'll see X and Y. That's the manipulators to move the image around. So if we just use the arrow key, we'll click the arrow there. Just need to make that as central as possible. That's about right for me. And I want it to sit with this bottom line here, which is the bottom of the barrier, I want it to sit on top of this red line, which is the x-axis. So we use the other manipulator and just click it up until it's there. That's fine for me. Okay, now, like I said, this is the front view. We only want this particular image set up this way to show on the front view. So back in here, axis, we want it only to be shown on front view. So if we go into the side view, you can't see the image anymore, which is perfect. That's what we want. So we can click that toggle arrow there, and that's fine. We don't need that anymore. But what we do need is another image for this side view. So what we can do is go back up to background images, add another image, and you see it's just here. It says not set. We haven't chosen one. We need to click open, navigate back to where you saved it. So it's the same image, exact same image, and again we just need to use these manipulators here. We can drag these. That was pretty bang on actually. There you go. Not quite perfect where I want it. So what we can do is we can click on here, and I want to go halfway between those two, I believe. So we can just go halfway between those two would be -3.790. -3.790. Enter. There we go. Smack bang in the middle. And then again, I want the bottom of this one to sit on that middle line. Oh, down a bit. Perfect. And then again, we only want this one to show up on the side view. I'll show you what I mean. If I go back to the front view, that second image shows up, which is not what we want. So we only want that for the right view. So if I go front, this image set up for the front, and go to side, this image is set up for the side, which is perfect. We don't need this panel open anymore. So we can press N, just get rid of that one. Now this orange square in the middle is obviously our cube. So now we need to move this up to sit on the same line. So with it selected, it's selected because it's orange. We press G to move around. You'll see you've got complete freedom to move it around wherever you want. Obviously we want to move it up perfectly, but no matter how you try, you'll never get it perfectly central on the image. So what we can do is lock it to that particular up and down axis, which is the Z axis in Blender. And all you need to do that is, whilst with it moving around, you can press Z and it'll lock it to that axis. So you just move it up, and there we go. Perfect. Now again, with it selected, we need to go back to solid mode so we can actually see the model rather than just the wireframe. By pressing Z we can do that, or again we can come down to here and select solid. So now what we need to do is stretch it out so it fills this image. So what we're going to do is we're going to enter edit mode. With the cube selected, go down to here and can click edit mode, or another way is just to press tab with it selected. And we need to select the top face. We can either select all the vertices on the top, or go down to here and click that face, so that then gives us a chance just to click that one face. So if we go back to front view, and using the G key again so we can move it around, and then the Z key again so it locks it to the up and down axis, we just literally slide it up to the top, and where we think we go click, left mouse click, and that's perfect. So same thing again, we want the side option. We want the side panel there. Now one of two ways of doing this now. Because we've centralized the image, we can either select each side individually, and using the G key, which is move, we can press G, and we're going sideways now, left to right, so we can press the X axis to lock it on the X axis, and we can either slot it in place there, or we can select that one and then select that one, go back to front view, and then we can scale them out along the X axis. So to scale, we use S, As you can see, it's scaling the whole thing. But if we press X straight after pressing S, it'll only scale along the X axis. So we just put it to there, and then left click to confirm, and now we have a very exciting rectangle. Look how exciting it is. I might just leave the tutorial there. That's perfect. We don't need a cement barrier. That's perfect. No, I'm only joking. So we go into side view by pressing numpad 3, or again if you're on a laptop you can come down to view and then click right. We need to go back into wireframe mode because as you can see we can't see the reference image. Press Z back into wireframe. This reference image works quite well because it shows you whereabouts you need to add these pinch in lines so we can shape it to the same silhouette as this. Now in order to pinch these lines in we essentially need to add more vertices to give us that more malleable block. So in order to do that we need to add some edge loops or edge cuts, whichever people say. By doing this in Blender we press Control R and you'll see a purple line appear. Just click left mouse button to confirm that you want one, and then you don't have to drag or anything, you don't have to hold anything else, just move your mouse down to there, that's fine. And am I going to add another one? Just there. I'm going to add another one just in there. Sometimes you sort of, after you've pressed Control R, you almost have to hunt around. I always find going towards the edge usually finds what you want. So I want another one just in the center there. That's fine. Now I want to go into vertex select mode. So these things here, that's face, edge and vertex. So you'll see I can select the vertices individually, which is fine, which is what we want. Now using that scale tool again, what I'm going to do is, again there's multiple ways of selecting vertices. You can either right click on each individual one, or you can right click and then hold shift and right click to select multiples, or there's a much easier way. If you want to select multiple vertices at the same time, tap C, it brings up this circle tool which you can scale up and down with your mouse wheel, and then just hold it over the group of vertices that you want to select and click, and you'll see that both of those are selected now. You can deselect with this again, press C and then use your middle mouse button clicking it down and you deselect. You can just drag over those two and it'll select them, much easier. What we want to do there is select all of those, and then I want to scale along the green axis. If you look down here, the green is the Y axis, so I press S followed by Y, and that will scale them into the sides. That's perfect, that's exactly what I want. Now there is another way of selecting that entire ring, which again is less clicks. When you're modelling, it's all about the less clicks because it is quite a time consuming task. So what I wanted to do was just scale this group of vertices and this group of vertices in just ever so slightly, just to give it a bit of a lip here. So instead of pressing C and click and then all of them are selected and then I can scale to my heart's content, I'm going to try something different. What you do is you hover your mouse over the edge you want to select. As you can see, this edge would make a ring around the square part of the model. So you press and hold Alt on your keypad and then right click and it selects all of those in that particular loop, and then that just gives you the freedom to scale along the Y axis, and there we go, that's all I wanted to do. So using that technique, if you press and hold, you just need to make sure after you've scaled something, just press A and it deselects everything. If anything's still orange, press it again until nothing is. So using that technique I've just shown you, we can hold Alt and right click, and then if you want to select more of these rings than one at a time, you press and hold Alt and Shift, right click right click, and that will select everything there. So all of those are selected. Now what I want to do with these is again scale along the Y axis. I am pressing S and Y. I don't know why it's not coming up on a screencast. So I'm zooming in using my mouse button, my mouse wheel. Okay, so now what I want to do is select those and those, a little bit more precise now, so the circle tool comes out. Again, scale along the Y axis. Those and those, scale along the Y axis. Okay, so if we just hover around the model, you can see it's in wireframe. If you press Z to leave wireframe mode, and then tab to jump out of edit mode, you can see that we have the basic shape down. Now realistically I was just going to create this and then just unwrap this, but I don't want to leave people with a subpar model, because as you can see it's not really much of a model. It's a bit crappy, to be honest, and you can see these straight edge lines going across there. In order to remove these straight edges, it's a very simple smooth shading. So with the object selected, if it's not selected it won't have an edge around it. Right click on it, it's got an edge. With it selected, press smooth, and it makes it look really crap. Really crap. So what you need to do is define the edges. So in edit mode, we just need to add a couple more loop cuts. I just need to get some more real estate, so I'm going to get rid of this panel here by pressing T, and then I'm going to expand on this particular window by pressing Shift and Space. And that expands any window that you look at. For example, if I went in here, cursor in here, Shift and Space, I have no idea why anybody would want this big. Shift and Space to leave it again. So Shift and Space into the viewport window. So in edit mode, what I'm going to do is press Ctrl R to add another loop cut. Make sure it's purple. Left to select that I want to do that. I'm just going to drag one to about there. And again, Ctrl R, another one. Drag it to about the same distance away. And there we go. In fact, I'm going to remove this one. Ctrl Z. And I'll tab out of edit mode back into object mode, and I'll show you the difference. If I scoot around to the left hand side, you can't really see any defining features on this edge here. It just looks like one smooth block. You can't see an edge here. However, this side has this extra loop cut on it, which just helps define this edge. You can see more of an edge here, which is obviously quite helpful. Now, I'm not going to go too overboard with these. Sometimes I do, because I do usually add subsurface modifiers, but I'm not going to go too overboard. So what I'm going to do is just add another loop cut like I did before, just in there. And I'm quite happy with that, that's fine, that'll do for me. Like I said, I just wanted to build a simple model. So what we need to do now is, like I said, we need to take out these chunks here, because this is where a forklift truck would come in to pick this up, to move it around, to make the finer adjustments. So in edit mode, with wireframe mode turned on, so once you're in edit mode press Z to get into wireframe. Again, it's more loop cuts, so Ctrl R and then just drag it along to there, Ctrl R, drag it along to there, Ctrl R, drag it along to there, and Ctrl R, drag it along to there. Another thing I was thinking about was, normally I would have a mirror modifier, so I'd only have to do half of this, and then Blender would mirror what I was doing on this side over on this side, so you only have to do half the job really. But I don't want to get in too confusing with things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add in 2 more loop cuts. There. And there. And then there. Oh no, I didn't want that one. If you do a loop cut you don't want, make sure it's highlighted and press Ctrl Z and it's gone. One in there. So then this gives me the freedom to get confused by wireframe mode, Z to get out of it, and then if I go down to face select that bottom face. Can I do both at the same time? That's a question. Yes, I can. Okay, what I did there was selected both of those polygons just going along the underneath of it, and I just selected those by right click, shift, right click, go back to front orthographic, and then press the G key and make sure you've locked yourself to the Z axis, and then you can't go side to side, and just literally pull it up until you can see the reference image lines underneath. Okay, so there you go, you've just created those sort of lips. But as you know, I created this lip, this sort of ramp almost at the bottom. So as we've brought these up, the width of the panel we've just brought up will remain the width of this, not this. So they will be sticking out a bit. So if you go into right orthographic, you'll see them. It's created this sort of strange shape here. So what we can do, they're both still selected. Go back into right orthographic, go into wireframe if you want, and then we need to we need to scale along the Y axis until they're in line with the rest of it, like so, and then it won't look as peculiar. Okay, now, like I did say at the beginning that these things usually have holes in the middle, whereas they would put chains through so they can lift them on cranes and offload them off trucks and etc, etc. This one, according to this reference image, does not. They don't have holes. If you look at the top view, this one has cutouts in the top, and then I can imagine like some sort of iron bar or steel bar going through the center of the actual barrier itself here, and the chains will be threaded into the recess here underneath the iron bar and back out again, and then they will pick it up from these points here. So we can add these in. What you need to do is select that top square that you've created. Now this is going to be using the extrude tool. What I want you to do is, with that one square selected, you press E, and what that will do is give you a chance to extrude in or out. Now we don't want to do that immediately, because if I just did that straight down, it'd be wafer thin, and I wouldn't like it. So with it moving around, just press the right mouse button to cancel the move, but it has still extruded a face out. Now press scale, which is S, and scale in just a little bit, about there, and then go over to the other side, the other square available at the top. Do the same thing. Press E, right click just to cancel the move, and then just scale just a smidge. Okay, they look about the same. So with them both selected, go into front view, go into wireframe, and then I'm going to bring it down to this line here. So if you press E to extrude them down, not move, because move will have a completely different effect. We need to extrude these down. And now you'll see we've got two indentations in the top there. It's not exactly how they look on the reference images. To be honest, we could do that slightly differently. So what I've just done is just you need to make sure you're back in edit mode, Control Z'd out of all of that and just left this first extrude and scale. I'll go back all the way. So now nothing is extruded. Click on the first square, E, right click to cancel the move. And then scale a smidge, and then scale along the Y axis just to make it thinner. Click on the next square, E to extrude, right click to cancel the move, scale a smidge, And then I'm going to go into right orthographic, I'm going to go into wireframe, and I can see these vertices here is where nothing happened. What? Never mind. Let's not do that. Let's just guesstimate. So we scale along the y-axis, and it's about there. That's fine. So with them both selected again, Z, I'm going to extrude them down to there. That's fine there. Okay, that looks fine. That looks good to me. Now, we haven't actually saved this yet, which is always dangerous. So, what we need to do is we need to Control S. I always like to create a new directory, although I do have one called tutorials. So we're going to save this as concrete barrier. Now if you just type in whatever you want, press enter, it'll add dot blend, press enter again to save it. So that is now saved as concrete barrier. You will realise that Control S will become your friend. So that's pretty much done for the base mesh. I just wanted to add just 2 more minor details. What I wanted to do is, in the original video I told you that these things are linked together with metal hoops at the sides. So when they're sat next to each other, they can be sat at slight angles. As long as the loops are intersecting, they jam a metal rod through the hoops. It's got a sort of curl at the top, and it links them together. It just gives them that bit of extra sturdiness, so to speak. So we're just going to add 2 loops there, and then 2 loops here. So in order to add a loop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something called a torus. So to add a new mesh, we press Shift A, and this brings up the mesh. As long as you're in edit mode, it brings up the mesh add, and let's go down to torus. You'll see this strange ring thing. This is a torus. Now if you press T, before you even move this, don't even touch this, otherwise the edit properties go away. And you'll see here at the bottom, add torus. Now the major segments is how many segments it has going around, how many rings it's made up of. This is currently made up of 48 segments. We don't want that. Let's say 8. Enter. That'll do for me. And then the minor segments is how many rings they are this way. We don't want that many again. Let's say 7. Yeah, that's fine. That's good for me. We're trying to make this as low poly as possible, so this sort of thing we're not really going to see. The player won't even notice. As long as it's there and as long as it looks round, the player won't even notice, so you don't have to worry about that. If we just edit out of edit mode, we can press the smooth key again, and you'll see this goes a little bit smoother. So now with this selected, back into front view, you can just move it over here first, and obviously the rings aren't that big, they're much smaller, so we need to scale this, not on any axis, just press S and scale it down. If you go into top view, you can see obviously we need this thing pretty central. That looks quite central to me. And then we need it so it's actually poking out of the cement. So it's jutting out like that. It's probably a bit big, to be fair. Let's scale it down some. These hoops aren't usually huge, but they have to be robust. That's still probably too big, but hey, let's just stick with that. Now, as you can imagine, there's some vertices connected to the back of this torus that are hidden now. We don't need them anymore, so let's get rid of them. So if we go into wireframe mode and press 1, we can see these faces that are behind this line that are no longer needed. So you can just go in and select the faces that are no longer needed. And all you need to do is press X, delete faces. And now if I was to go back into solid mode, you can see it hasn't changed anything, but it's probably just saved as maybe 20 polys. No, about 10. No, probably about 8. So there you go. Now, what we need to do is basically just duplicate this. We don't need to go through the whole rigmarole of adding another one. Just click on one of the faces, just to make sure that nothing else is selected. And with your mouse cursor over the torus, press L. That will select any adjoining vertices, polygons connected with this particular mesh. Obviously it's not connected to this base mesh, so that doesn't get selected. If we go into side view and we press Shift D for duplicate, Shift duplicate, you'll see you've got free reign of moving it around again. We obviously want to lock it to the Z axis, bring it down to about there. Again, you don't have to be perfect with these things. Now what we want to do is obviously we need more hoops on the other side, so we can just duplicate these again. So if you hover over the top one that isn't selected anymore and L, you'll see they're selected. Fantastic. Let's go into top view, which is 7. Shift D to duplicate, and I want to go along the x-axis so they're in line like that. And now we need to rotate these so that section is back inside the model. Now because you're looking at it top down, these things will rotate perfectly along the z-axis, which is what we want. So you can press R for rotate and then type on your number pad 180 and then enter to confirm. So what we need to do now is drag these things along the x-axis into there like that. Do they look the same as those? Near enough. Now if I were to have multiple of these barriers and stack them next to each other and try and jam a pole down the side, it's not going to work because these things are the same height. You need to justify these either up or down a smidge so they would actually lock in place. Now you can ensure that they're actually high enough by going into side view and wireframe, because then you can see through the model. So now give it a bit of room. So now that is perfect. It's not a very complex model. It's just a good base mesh to add a nice little texture to. And yeah, we'll move on to unwrapping this in the next tutorial. I've been rambling now for over 30 minutes. Yeah, we'll move on to the next tutorial and the next pit, which is where we'll unwrap, and I'll show you how to spread out the UV maps nicely so you don't get any seams, and I'll show you how to bake an ambient occlusion map as well so you can get some natural shadows. But that's all for this one. If you liked it, hit that like button. If you want to see more of them, hit subscribe. Yeah, thanks for watching.